Mokori, babes. Mokori, I have a crush on all the babes in the sauna. Red bikini mokori babe, black bikini mokori babe. Beige is nice, but I'm losing my mind for the babe in the white.
Hey, Rio.
Bikini mokori babe, white bikini.
Are you listening to me, man?
Yeah, white bikini babe, yeah. Red, black, beige, and white bikini.
Your focus is on helping that client, right?
Miss Sweatermelons, I got it.
Hello and welcome to Comic Book Movie Oblivion, the podcast about feature films based on comic books and comic strips that people have stopped talking about. We are your hosts, Jordan and Kumar. That's me.
And me.
And this week we are talking about Ciity Hunter, 2024 Ciity Hunter. We have tried for a very long time to do a movie as soon as it comes out.
Yes.
We have failed multiple times. This time we've succeeded. It just came out a week ago on
very exciting.
Netflix. I wonder if it got a bit of a theatrical release in Japan.
I don't know. That sounds like the sort of thing we should have looked up before we started recording.
I did wonder about that because often Netflix will have a limited release, so they have awards. So they're what's the word? So they are eligible.
That's the word.
So sometimes they will have they'll release it in one theater for one day.
Yes.
Just to skirt the rules.
Yes.
In some way. So I don't know if it was really a theatrical feature film or not, but here it is. Pause the podcast. I don't think there's any... Oh, there's a couple of twists.
Yes, there are, but they're not super important.
Yeah,
I think
don't
they're
it's a big deal. Yeah.
And jokes, I suppose we'll spoil the jokes as we always do, but I don't think...
Yeah,
I don't
probably
think
not
it's
a
big deal.
pause this week.
I wouldn't bother pausing.
Yeah. So, I did read Volume 4 this week.
Yes.
The scanlation is getting worse and worse. But I will say, so I only made I've done a couple of things about it.
Good.
One thing I noticed that there's more of, by Volume 4, is breaking of the fourth wall, so to speak, or breaking of panel borders. So, for example, there's a character that looks exactly like Ryo, like Ciity Hunter, and we have a portrait of him, and in the panel below, he's climbing up into that panel to look at it. And several times, something doesn't make sense, and they peel back the corner of the panel to see the hard-upon author working on it, on the comic, and unable to comment on what's happening. Like, where did this idiotic idea came from? The author is not working hard enough on it, and they'll peel back, and you'll just see him with his head down drawing the comic. This happened several times.
Yes. We've also got more appearances of the bird.
Yes.
So it's sort of like a goofy bird.
Yeah, so what it is often you'll have, in a comic, you'll have ellipses. In manga, you'll have an ellipses over the characters when it's just silence.
Yes.
So it'll be over at the top of the panel. Instead of when a word
Anyone
balloon,
that's played a JRPG knows about the ellipses.
Yes. So in this case, it's the ellipses over the head, but he's actually made a visual joke out of it by making it look like it's the motion lines of a bird flying past.
That's what it is.
Yes.
Okay.
I think that's what it is most of the time.
And it does seem to pop up when he said or done something awkward or dumb.
Yes.
And it's like a tumbleweed.
Yes.
But in this case, a bird. And the bird is in this week's movie.
There was?
Well, we have a black bird in a couple of scenes, and it has to be a reference.
Oh, okay.
And while we're on the subject, Nicky Larson also had the bird, but it appeared in the very final scene.
Oh.
It just flies past in the background.
Oh, that's right. I never even put that
And I had no
together.
idea what this bird was at that point because we hadn't got far enough.
Yeah.
But you're right. It's getting more absurdist.
Yes. Yes.
Or cartoony.
Yes. And something as I was reading this week's volume, that I noticed that we hadn't had in any movies, this was before I watched this week's, was there was none of the boner joke, the visual boner jokes.
Yeah.
Of the pants tent.
Yeah.
The pants tent, which happens all the time in the comic, and he seems very happy, he's very pleased with himself whenever it happens. He doesn't really care about it. It's not a big deal.
He's not ashamed of it.
No, exactly. He has no shame about it. He rides his motorcycle, and this pants tent appears with the sound effect mokori.
Yep.
And as we talked about in that first volume, I think even the current English translation just has that sound effect mokori. They haven't changed it. And this is key for this week's episode, and even for knowing the mayor's name in Nicky Larson.
Yes.
Understanding that was an in-joke there. The other thing I noticed that we hadn't had was comically elaborate tortures, like the thing with the pigs and the jewelry. And in this volume, he captures these two gangsters. He's trying to get information about who hired them.
Yes.
And he knocks them out. And when they wake up, they're tied in this elaborate way on their backs, on the ground, together. And they're holding up a glass with a liquid in it. He tells them that's nitro.
Yeah.
And he drops it. He spills a little drop on the ground to show how explosive it is.
Yes.
So they're tied and they can't put it down or it'll explode.
Well, they're holding a tray.
Yes.
And on the tray is the glass.
But also, he's covered their bodies in chicken feed, and he's got cages full of chickens, and he releases the chickens, and they start eating the feed, and it starts tickling these guys, so they're laughing, and they're going to drop the
Not to drop the tray with the nitroglycerin on it. Where did he get the chickens?
Yes.
In the middle of Tokyo.
Well, yeah.
Where did he get the
Where did
chicken feed?
Where did he get the pigs? In the pig slop, when he did that whole jewelry store thing. But there's also, I noticed in this volume, and it's happened before, where he becomes a professor. He takes over, he goes to this university, becomes a professor, he teaches a class, and there's a little footnote in there that says, what kind of class could he have possibly taught? From in the comic.
Yeah.
It's like a fourth wall.
Yeah.
Come to the honest, but I was like, how did he even get the job in the first place? How did he get hired? Doesn't matter. It's one of his master of disguise things. It's not relevant to the silliness that's happening.
And of course, and he's master of disguise, but the glasses he has are the wrong prescription for him. So when he's wearing, he couldn't get plain glass lenses, you know. He has to keep taking them off, but then he puts them back on so he can't, because as soon as he takes them off, and it's a university class, so it's full of young women, and of course he gets mokori, and then he puts the glasses back on so he won't be able to see them anymore.
Yeah.
And get distracted. It is very funny.
Yeah. So that's all that I noted this time. But it did seem to me, especially with the breaking of the fourth wall, that to me is a really comic book thing, the way he's playing with the panels and stuff.
Yep.
It's so comic booky. You really, if you'd waited until volume 4, you'd be like, well, we can't make a movie of this. Because it's too specific to comics.
Yep.
But that's not the case. We've got 4, kind of a 5th in the background.
But I think we've been eased into this, and it's building as we go along. Yeah. And now I'm finding that some of the previous movies, even the Jackie Chan one, which just starts so strangely, you know, with him in that surreal kind of stage with the smoke billowing around, and he's talking to us, the audience, and like, this isn't anything like the comic we just read. Well, it is.
It kind of is, and that's happened every week. It's been like, oh yeah, this kind of is.
We've discovered a little more each week.
I'm finding the Street Fighter sequence in that 1993 City Hunter was actually very kind of City Hunter-y in a way, because he's got all these references to Fists of the North Star and Astro Boy and all that stuff. It's just that they're brief, and that was a very long set piece, which, as you pointed out that week, was probably there because the director was like, well, this is popular now, so let's throw it in there. So that kind of craziness, real cartoon craziness, and I think Nicky Larson had it in a few scenes, maybe.
Definitely.
And certainly that alley with the stacking of the bottles in Mr. Mumble. There's been some moments that are like this kind of craziness that we get in the comic.
Yes. And it's become more apparent as time has gone on that this is something that characterizes the comic. Yeah. And presumably for people, I mean, this ran for a number of years, so...
almost 10 years, I think, or something like that.
So there's a lot of material, presumably it just stays like this. Yeah.
I mean, I think it's getting... Well, like I said, Volume 1, I think, is a bit more straightforward, and it's building, as you said, it's building up, it's getting more extreme.
Well, this volume was the first appearance of the hammer.
Yes, that's right. Yep, and she uses it on that professor.
Yet not on Ryu himself, which was interesting. Yeah. But yes, this hammer, it can't exist, you know. Yeah. Where did she get it from? It's not really 100 tons. Yeah. Oh no, it's not 100 tons at first, is it?
That's right, it keeps changing. It's like 10 tons, I think, the first time or something. But as I said a few episodes ago, I think like animation seems like the best outlet for this if you're going to adapt it into another medium, but... Maybe the CG technology is reaching a stage where some of this stuff is kind of achievable in a way, and I think we kind of did get that in Nikki, and we got that a little bit this week.
Well, we can talk about that.
Yeah.
We absolutely can talk about that. I don't have much to add regarding the comic. As you pointed out, it wasn't a very great translation. I did learn some new words. I don't understand where they got these words from.
I have a feeling this was actually translated by someone Japanese.
Right. Because
it's just a hunch I have from reading it, or it was somebody that put it into an early machine translation system and just didn't change a word.
Well, they did one, instead of the word pendant, And unfortunately, I've forgotten the precise word, but it refers to
Pendantine or something.
Pendantine, and it refers to a very specific architectural feature of domes. Which I'd never heard of this word. And unless you built domes, you wouldn't have heard of this word either. Another was a person is described as lubric, which is a word that's not in common parlance anymore, but is associated with lubricant or lubricious, meaning slippery.
So, in the early days of Google Translate, when you put a word in and it didn't have all the databases it's got now, all the learning it's got now, it would have put up a guess.
Yeah.
Pendanto in Japanese, it would be like, maybe this is pendantine, and then the translator just, that's why I think the translator didn't know what the English word was and thought this is the English answer.
Chucking it in the older version of Google Translate.
I don't know, maybe.
Possibly.
That's it. Anyway, please, Manga Hot, please somehow make this available in an easier way in English so we can actually read the subsequent volumes. Okay, so let's talk about this movie. Did you note the name of the director? I think.
Yes, his name is Yuichi Sato.
Okay.
Or Sato Yuichi.
Okay. And any credits we should be aware of?
I did look it up. I'm afraid it's escaped me. I haven't written it down.
Okay. It probably doesn't matter.
He had done another manga adaptation, I believe.
Okay.
But I haven't written it down.
Okay. I didn't really recognize many of these actors. Ryohei Suzuki, who plays Ciity Hunter, is in Tokyo Tribe, which we'll be talking about at some stage.
So he'll be back.
He will be back. But he looked really familiar to me, and some of the actors look familiar, but, I mean, these are all young actors that are well after my time. I mean, I left Japan 20 years ago, so I didn't really know them. So this is our first version that's, like, in Tokyo, in Japanese.
Yes.
The city is shot really beautifully, I have to say. It's almost every scene's around Kabukicho, which is the entertainment district or red light district in some parts of it. And they've made it really look amazing.
Yeah, it does look incredible. It looks like a fantasy landscape, a fantastic landscape.
Yeah.
Full of cosplaying people and hot revelers.
Hostesses, guys who are trying to lure men into their hostess bars, that kind of thing.
Yep.
Everybody's there. It's like the funnest place. It's really like, somebody, who is it that said it was like an amusement park for grown-ups? I can't remember who.
It certainly appears that way in this film.
Yeah.
They've done a great job of making it look like a wonderland.
Yes. So we've got the bulletin board. It's a blackboard.
Yes.
Really old school.
Blackboard.
And it doesn't seem out of place somehow. It's a blackboard with chalk. And we got the XYZ, as it's called in Japanese. I've been calling it XYZ. Apologies.
And you're from Canada.
Yeah.
Now we've had this discussion.
Yes. Yeah, we certainly have. So he gets an assignment from this woman, and this is the first, minute of the movie, and she leans over. They're in a cafe. She's describing the job. Please find my sister. Her name was it Kurumi? Yeah, Kurumi.
Yeah, Kurumi.
And she leans forward, and we get he's looking down her cleavage. This is within I'm going to say first minute of the movie. Really great, I was like, oh, here we are.
Yeah, it's a shame it doesn't last.
No.
This kind of brevity isn't sustained because this film has a 19-minute intro.
Is that how long it was?
I think 18 minutes and 40 seconds.
Okay. Wow.
Which is before the credits. Which is the longest I've ever seen an introduction go for.
I feel like there was something else recently that had an intro that was that long, but that is really pretty crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, so it was as long as the first act of the film could have been.
Yes.
But it was just an intro to introduce the characters.
Yes. But we get all the characters almost right off the bat, but we'll get to that. So now we get a bit of a montage with news reports, and it seems the city is very crime-ridden.
There's monsters, it seems like.
There's random stabbings and stuff. But there's also a line about somebody jumped up 20 floors of a building. I was like, that's a mistranslation. No, that is actually what we learn is correct later.
Someone throwing a vending machine.
Yes.
Another person leaping, climbing up a building, and someone leaping over a 20, leaping it's almost like Superman leaping a tall building with a single bound. Yeah,
but we don't see any, we just hear about this. So Ciity Hunter goes on his mission to save this girl, Kurumi. He kind of tracks her down. His partner at this stage is Murakami. Is that was?
Makimura.
Makimura. So Makimura unlike other versions which have kind of fiddled with the formula a bit, like in the Jackie Chan, we just had that weird intro.
Yes.
Nicky Larson started with Kaori as the partner. We got the backstory in a flashback.
Yes. Here we're meeting all the story beats.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
And we're taking 19 minutes to do it. But
Yes. So he does this. They found her. She's in this building. He does a zip line across Kabukicho over the rooftops, crashes into this building, does a face kick in a it's not like a slow motion. What do you call it? It's like a freeze.
Yeah.
Where he kicks this guy in the face, and we get this elaborate martial arts sequence where he beats up all these guys. At one point, he does shoot a guy. He's got his back turned to a guy who's about to shoot him, and he shoots him
without looking,
like through, like under his armpit,
through his jacket.
Yeah.
It's cool. It's very City Hunter. Yeah.
It's very City Hunter that moment. Yeah, especially. But then Kurumi runs away for some reason. Like they've come to rescue her.
She doesn't know what's going on. She doesn't know that he's there to rescue them.
Yes.
She just knows that violence is occurring, and he looks. He doesn't look like a cop.
Yeah.
He's still wearing his red T-shirt and his powder blue jacket.
Yes. And so they end up in this elaborate chase through the city. At one point, he crashes through like a soapland, which is like a brothel where they bathe you, and he ends up on this like one of those rubber mattress, inflatable
mattress like you would float on in a pool.
Yes, and he slides out on it. And I like that when he hits the street, there's actually a boing sound effect. I think we've complained about sound effects in movies in the past that are really cartoony, but somehow I was like, okay. I was okay with it.
It's okay. It's understated. He sails by... There's a pretty funny sequence where he goes down the stairs on that lounge, that inflatable lounge or whatever you call it, and then he sails, I think, in front of the moon.
Yes.
And Makimura looks at him and says he's like a perverted Aladdin.
Yes, that's right. Yes. I have to say the translation is pretty loose, which is good, like in a good way. Oh, but we didn't talk about the Mokori, because it starts with him singing this Mokori song.
I thought we were going to come back to it, but that's good. Okay. I'm glad.
Because that was when he's on the roof, like, doing his recon. He's actually looking at all these girls in a spa, which is what we had in Nicky Larson as well. He was looking at girls at the gym working out across the road.
Yeah, it's like a sauna.
Yeah,
Did
something like that.
people do the saunas?
They do bathhouses.
I thought it was more a kind of... hot springs kind of deal.
Yeah, it could have been a center, like a public bathhouse.
The English translation's gone with sauna, I suppose.
Right. Okay, that makes sense.
And yes, so they're wearing bikinis, essentially.
Yeah.
And he's singing a song, every other word of which is Mokori.
Yes.
It's like, Mokori babes, Mokori girl.
So, like in the comic, there's no explanation of what Mokori is, which is the sound effect of a bulge, which is normally used to describe an erection.
Yeah.
So, I did look this up.
We did.
Just before recording. This is, in Japanese, has a lot of sound effects are called, and I had to look up this word, which I've never heard before, which is phenomemes, which is a word that mimics an action, condition, or manner that does not make a sound. So it looks like a sound effect in a comic book, like Mokori, which represents a thing that's happening. But
so it's representing it. It's a sound that's signifying a thing.
But that sound doesn't
exist. But that sound has no basis in... So it's distinct from an onomatopoeia, which is like bang, click, shing.
Yeah.
No, it's a...
This is not a recordable sound.
Exactly.
But it's in the comic. And it's in this movie again and again with no explanation. So...
It's never explained.
This is in the first minute or two of the movie, and so I guess it's aimed at City Hunter fans. It's assuming that you're a City Hunter fan who knows this word already.
I think the filmmakers and eventually the translation team have just thrown up their hands that this is absolutely essential to the character. He has to be talking about Mokori all the time. Yeah. And in fact, I mean, he can't actually be talking about erections with every time he uses that word. It's just something he throws in for emphasis.
Yes, yes. In fact, in a way that it, like, in some sentences, like, it doesn't make sense. Which there's a certain scene later on we'll get to where he says Mokori in a sense that does make sense, and the English translation has left it out.
Yeah.
And I've come across doing translations myself sometimes. There's, like, a way you can construct a joke in Japanese and it's just like, this isn't going to make any sense. You just have to remove it, replace it, whatever, yeah.
Sure, but
again, there's a lot of Mokori talk, but in the comic it's not talk. We get to see the pants tent and the sound effects. So
that's right.
It's a substitution of sorts. Much like Mayor Mokori in Nicky Larson.
That's right. It is a substitution. and yet one that they felt is essential to the character.
Yeah. So they finally catch up with Kurumi, but she suddenly has this reaction, and there's like these weird veins show up on her face, and she leaps away. She makes a superhuman escape, like Spider-Man.
Yes.
So I was surprised because I knew we're going down the Angel Dust route, the comic story about the Angel Dust, which you talked about in our first episode.
We did.
Yeah. And then Saiko shows up. Saiko Nogami, the cop. Who's
Helen in
Helen, yeah, and she's been in all of them.
Yes,
and she shows up very early in this one. I guess in the comics we still haven't seen her by Volume 4, but she must become a real regular because she's in all 4 versions of this. Also, Kaori had been trying to get a hold of Makimura on the phone because it's her birthday and they're supposed to meet, and he's out on this job.
I think that's also in Volume 1.
Yes,
he's meeting her for her birthday because he's going to tell her that she's adopted.
That's right.
This also is here.
Yes.
So in fact, this is a little silly. Like, the start of the movie has all of this stuff that is straight from the comic.
Yes.
They're just going... It's like they've lined up all their dominoes and they're just knocking them down one by one.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, the movie's meant to have started, but we've still got Makimura talking about meeting his sister.
Yes, but it's in the middle of all the other chaos. Yeah. All the other stuff has happened. We've met a client. We've had this huge martial arts fight. We have a chase across the city. All this wacky stuff is happening. It's just embedded. These story points are embedded in there. And it's like right after the job, he goes to meet Kaori. She's like, "What is your job?" And he's like, "Well, I help find lost pets." She suspects something otherwise. He's supposed to tell her, as in the comic, he's supposed to tell her on her birthday that she was adopted.
Yeah.
At this point, they didn't mention that her biological father, was a murderer that had been killed by Makimura's cop father.
Yeah.
I thought they were going to leave that plot point out, but it actually does come back. They actually Joker it. They do like a Batman 89 Joker move with it.
They do. You're right. They do.
Yeah.
The emphasis of Batman is felt once again.
Yeah. So while Makimura and Kaori are having this dinner and he's about to tell her.
And incidentally, I just want to jump in.
Yeah.
Makimura has, as Ryo is driving Makimura to the dinner date, or is being driven. No, he's driving. He's driving in there. He keeps saying over and over, "Don't hit on her."
Right.
Don't hit on her.
Yeah.
But Ryo is not going to the birthday dinner.
Right.
So why does he keep saying to him, "Don't hit on her"?
Maybe his word will get out. I don't know.
Well, it's because it's from the comic.
Yes.
I mean, we have to have this line so that we know that ladies' man Ryo can't hit on Kaori.
Yes.
Makimura's sister.
Yeah.
And yet, it's really odd.
Well, it's
the pacing here.
Yes, but he does have to try to wave him away. Like, he won't leave. He's sitting in the car outside, and he's like trying to subtly gesture to him to drive away.
I just found the pacing of the beginning of this film to be really odd, and it felt like they wanted to get all their comic references out of the way early on.
Somehow I didn't notice it. I think it was odd that all this stuff happened on the same night.
Yeah.
I guess, but I didn't really notice because so much was going on.
I was worried the rest of the movie was going to be like that, but it wasn't.
I mean, maybe it was like, for me, it was like Nicky Larson, like I was distracted by the Mokori song that he sings and all that funny stuff, the weird stuff. I was like laughing through all this stuff and not noticing that there was too much plot happening, maybe. I was just surprised that like Kaori is right there. Like, she doesn't show up until a couple volumes into the manga.
Yeah.
But or maybe a few chapters in or something like that. But she's right there. We get the text in the opening scene almost from her.
I feel like this is... I think this feels like Volume 1 on Fast Forward.
Yes.
It's like, hey, it feels like they want to get Volume 1 out of the way so they can tell a Ciity Hunter story.
Yes.
Because you have to know all this stuff about them.
Yeah.
You know, you have to know Kaori is, you have to know Makimura is, you have to know he dies, you have to know that Ryo can't sleep with Kaori, you know.
Yeah.
You have to know that he's an expert gunsmith.
Yes.
Or gun...
Yeah, and a martial artist, yeah.
/ martial artist. He does a lot of martial arts in this. He does a lot of martial arts and a lot of crazy gun exploits.
Gunplay, yeah.
And he does and we established that he does kind of like wacky moves.
Yes.
So he whips one guy's belt off.
Yes.
So his pants fall down, and then he uses the belt to tie up another guy's feet.
Yeah.
It all feels very Ciity Hunter.
Yeah.
And I feel like the filmmaker, you know, I feel like Sato or whoever thought, we need to recap Volume 1.
Yeah.
And then we'll tell a new Ciity Hunter story. is what feels like happened.
Yeah.
And it's so... I just find that's a strange way to do your movie.
Okay, we'll come back around to that. So, Kaori and Makimura are having this dinner in the restaurant, and he's about to tell her heritage.
Yes.
Suddenly a truck crashes through, and this guy jumps out. He's got all these crazy veins on his face, the same way that Kurumi did.
Yep.
And he attacks Makimura. Makimura stabs him with a dinner knife.
Yes.
A bit like when he threw those dinner knives at those two guys behind his back.
Oh, yeah.
It's a bit of a nod to that, I think.
Oh, no, yes. But also, in Volume 1, Makimura impresses the gangsters by throwing knives at them that he had in his coat as well.
Yes, right, okay.
Yeah, so both he and Ryo have had knife-related shenanigans.
That's right, yeah, okay. So he tries to stop this guy, this driver that came out of the truck and is all drugged up and veiny and stuff, but that guy kills him. There's actually off-screen, we just hear the sound effects of the stabbing. It's pretty Candyman-ish, like full-on stabbing sound effects.
Yes.
He's dying. Ryo comes back for some reason.
Don't know why.
But he comes back, he sees...
He's his spidey sense.
Yeah, he sees the truck. He, runs in there. We get a scene that we've seen several times in the comic. We saw it in Nicky Larson play out the same way. Almost in Mr. Mumble, where the partner's dying in his arms and says, "Look after my sister."
Yeah.
In the Rain, and I think, was it in the Rain in Nicky Larson as well? Or in the comic as well?
It was definitely Rain in the comic.
Okay.
And here it's a sprinkler system.
Oh, that's right, it's a sprinkler
Because
system.
they're indoors in the restaurant.
That is correct, yeah.
Yes, it definitely was outdoors in Nicky Larson because...
They were outside that strip club or whatever.
Yes,
yeah.
and also because I noticed that it clearly wasn't raining that night, so the rain was in a perfect square around them.
That might have been a deliberate joke.
Oh, could well have been. I wouldn't put it past it.
Yeah. Okay, so now we learn that Makimura was a former Kakasaico and her boss Ito come up to berate these two for causing all this trouble or whatever. Like, they're not supposed to be doing all this stuff.
Well, they're vigilantes,
police. Yeah, exactly. They're police. Stay out of it. Makimura's a former cop. So now Kaori. That was before.
Yeah, it was before even the dinner. Yeah, it was after Kurumi, the girl, had escaped.
Yeah. So
then, after the death, so we finally have the credits roll.
Yes. Right. Okay. Now
now the film ostensibly starts.
Yes. Yeah. So now Kaori wants to find this killer. Ryo keeps shoving her aside, like saying, "Get lost, kid. Stay out of this." He's drunk. He's drunk hanging out at Kabukicho. She's like, "Why aren't you looking for my brother's killer?" He's like, "Dead is dead. Doesn't matter now."
Yeah, he's quite cruel to her, actually.
Yeah. And he's like, "Get lost." She's very keen to...
so she's sort of amateurishly running around showing random people in Kabukicho photo of her brother, asking if they've seen him, which seemed odd to me because he's dead.
Yeah.
You watched him die. Perhaps it should have been, "Do you know him?" But the translation said, "Have you seen him?"
Yeah, no, I think, you're right. It
was a bit of an odd choice.
Him or something, but yeah.
But yeah, so, she keeps running up to Ryo and insisting he do something, and she kind of...
He's always got a woman on each arm, or he's hanging out,
It's interesting, it's very chaste, though.
I think this is almost the most chaste of the four.
It definitely is. It definitely is, because we are in the...
He never accidentally gropes anyone, and he's looking at those girls in the sauna.
Yeah.
But he never drills a hole in his wall to see his neighbor in the bathroom the way Nicky Larson did.
That's right. In fact, he doesn't commit anything that would be considered assault or a misdemeanor.
Yeah.
And actually, this is this is the era in which we live.
Yes, absolutely.
So this is the era of Me Too.
Yeah. I did mention that I felt like the comic would not age well in our first episode, but then it actually kind of shifted. As the volumes went on, there was less accidental groping.
Yes. It was that first volume was pretty gropey.
Yeah.
Well, I did read an article, so there's not a lot of information about this film, obviously, because it came out on Thursday. But I did find an article in the Japan Times. City Hunter manga hero drops the sexism for new live action film, and they say that in that the Suzuki himself told the Japan Times, "We made it a rule that Ryo Seiba in our live-action version will not touch someone's body without their consent." While the original manga, this is quoting from the article, serialized in 1985 contained some very explicit, in quotation marks, depictions that a subsequent anime adaptation then downplayed on television, Suzuki said, "We updated it even further with a contemporary audience in mind, adding that in the rules we're also not allowing the character to joke about someone's sexuality."
Huh.
As well. And on set they had an intimacy coordinator.
Ah, okay. Okay, interesting.
Good work if you can get it.
Yeah. Yeah. So at some stage, Kaori ends up in his apartment. How does she worms her way? I think he rescues her, like she's about to be abducted by some guys while she's stumbling through her own investigation.
Yeah.
Maybe he brings her back to his place. I can't remember exactly the sequence.
She busts in on him. He's like asleep or something, right? Or no, that's later.
No, that's later. He's I don't know, but they end up back there. He's got a folder, like a trading card folder, that's full of business cards for escorts.
Yes.
And he's got a box full of pornography DVDs that falls. When she picks it up, it just spills out on the floor.
It's such a great... It's happened in 3 of the 4 City Hunter movies.
Yes.
That porn falls all over the floor.
Yes.
And yet it has yet to show up in the comics, though.
Yeah, no, it's a substitution.
Yes, substitution.
It's a substitution. Yeah. So...
And he goes, "It's my Mokori material!"
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, research, he calls it.
His Mokori research, right. Yeah, you're right. It's even more disingenuous.
Yeah.
Instead of Mokori material, boner material, it's boner research.
Yeah. Yeah. I think he kicks her out again, and then he ends up back in Kabukicho again. He's there again, drunk with girls. She accosts him again on the street in Kabukicho. He says, "Well, I have to go do this thing, come with me," or something like that. And we get one of the craziest sequences.
"You want to see my world?" It's very...
"Oh, yes. Do you want to see what my world is like?" or something like that.
It's such a cliche, you know. "Oh, I'll show you what my world is like. You don't want to know.
Yeah.
But I'll show you." And yeah, then this scene, would you like to explain?
It's like a burlesque show.
Yeah.
But he is the dancer. He is the dancer, and he whips on. And everybody's cheering for him. It's like a scheduled show. It doesn't seem like an open mic night. He goes up there. He strips down. He's just got these little like Speedos on.
Yep.
But he whips those off.
He's got, what is it?
And he's got a fan dance.
What's it called again? A Mokori harness or something?
I don't remember what.
You just looked it up though.
Oh, yes, no, it was Budgie.
Well, Budgie Smugglers in English.
No, Mokori Bikini.
That's it.
Yeah, it was Mokori
He's wearing
bikini.
what in Japanese is called a Mokori bikini.
Yes.
Slang for bikini bottom.
Yes.
And it's sort of got stars on it, and it leaves little to the imagination.
Yeah, but he whips it off, and then he does this fan dance, so he's blocking his genitals with this fan the whole time. Well, we have to have 4 weeks in a row. We have had Male Physique Corner on the podcast, and here we go again. Guy is incredibly fit. It's post-Marvel era, I guess. It was...
Yeah. He is
ripped.
He's ripped. And he has very low body fat.
Yeah.
Like, everything is in definition.
Yeah.
He doesn't
probably for this scene.
Right. He probably, fasted or whatever it is they do.
Yeah,
they go without water for a day.
3 days. It's 3 days with no dehydration.
3 days?
Yeah.
That's enough to kill a person.
It's the what's his name from Superman, Man of Steel, that guy. He talked about
Henry Cavill. He did it for that scene in The Witcher, yeah.
He talked about it on Graham Norton. So it's 3 days. So you can have 1 liter on day 1, and then like half a liter on day 2, and then 0 liters on day 3 when you're shooting, is how it works. And that makes your skin thinner, so it sits tighter on your muscles and makes your veins bulgier. And he says that's okay, but then if they delay your scene till like the next day or something, you just gotta endure this.
That could hurt a person.
It certainly could. You think they could CG it for those DC and Marvel movies at least? Just CG the veins on there.
Well, this dude,
like they did on these people's faces. Anyway, this guy is so shredded, and he does this.
Shredded is the word.
Does this fan dance with no clothes on. It's a very City Hunter-ish kind of moment.
I wonder, is it? He doesn't really do anything like that.
No, he doesn't, but it's kind of like his mugging for the audience in the comic, I feel, in a way.
Yes, it is a bit like that. But
I don't know, maybe I'm not right about it.
No, there's no right or wrong. But it seems apropos of nothing.
Yeah.
He has no... Normally when he does, in the comic, when he does a thing, dresses up in a costume, in a disguise, or dresses up as the mailman, or does something really odd, it's
Oh,
purpose.
it's a disguise for a purpose. You're right. You are right. Yeah.
Yeah, it's sort of...
It was not for a purpose except
for
this is a
that
thing he
gag.
normally does on Thursday nights or
his
something.
World.
Yes.
He threatened to show her a dark and terrible world, and it's him doing a burlesque dance.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
He takes her to the secret casino, which is a bit like
It's a bit like John Wick, isn't it?
well, it's a bit like in the comic. They went to that secret casino that
they did,
the
didn't
Union
they?
was running.
You know, you're right. I was watching the scene and I was thinking, this doesn't feel like City Hunter. Ryo doesn't meet with gangsters in an opulent back room.
Oh, he goes in there the night before, rigs the roulette machine, and then comes back the next night and wins.
The meeting, yes, you're right. He definitely does go into a backroom casino. I'd flaked on that. What it doesn't do is he's not usually on cozy terms with
The gangster, what was his name?
bosses.
Atsuka or something like that.
Well, he calls him Gramps in the translation, or Jisan.
Old man, he calls him old man.
Did you have a different translation to me? Because in mine he called him Gramps.
He might have called him different things different times.
Okay.
Old man a couple
How
of
could
times.
we? You must have watched it on Netflix as well.
Yeah, I certainly
It's
watched
the only
it.
place it's available.
I watched it on, maybe the yellow subtitles are different from the white subtitles.
Oh, I had white subtitles.
Okay, I don't know. Have to double check on this.
We're so well informed on comic book movie oblivion.
Yeah, so he's talking to this gangster, this old man who runs one of the big Yakuza gangs.
Yeah.
And he's trying to get information about Kurumi.
Yeah.
From this guy, and he reveals that he's been hanging out in Kabukicho, getting drunk every night because he's like searching the underworld bars for information about
That's
her.
it.
About the killer of Makimura as well. That's another thing he's trying to do.
Yes.
He wasn't just hanging out for fun.
No.
So this is all revealed in this moment. Now I'm starting to lose some threads of the plot here with Kurumi. Because this guy, the old man knows who she is. She was one of two kids that was...
Yes, well, here the old man reveals that this recent spate of violence is being caused by people that are being forcibly exposed to this drug.
Yeah.
He knows about it, and because he's a virtuous, organised criminal, he wants to put a stop to it. Only one person has ever survived the drug, so only one person can provide information on the people who are engaged in these experiments, and that's Kurumi. Because of that,
She's the only one that survived and still has wits about her.
Yes,
Right.
that's it.
Yeah.
That's it. So he had some of his henchmen abduct her and take her to the room, and that's when Ryu comes in, because her sister, Kurumi's sister, or who we think is Kurumi's sister,
Yeah.
has hired him to rescue her from the gangsters.
Yes.
So, of course, he interrupted before they were able to get any information out of her.
Yeah.
And now they're back to square one.
Wait, so how did she escape from the bad guys that drugged her?
She was turned loose, as they all are.
Oh.
But she was the only one that kept her wits about her.
Oh, okay. And so...
Oh, no, I tell a lie. We get a flashback later. She escapes by herself.
Okay.
She escapes and snatches some samples of the drugs.
Okay, right. Yeah, that's right, because Makimura did have those... He found the vials, he picked
recovers
them up, yeah.
She drops them when she Spider-Man's out of the alley.
Yeah.
They have no bearing on
Okay,
the
and so
plot.
the gangsters had her because they wanted information about this drug thing.
Yes, because this Yakuza boss is a guri.
Okay.
Kind of
Okay.
another thing that's...
Okay.
Yeah, sure, it's fine.
The
Ryo's not exactly
so
on the
it's
right side of
so
the
it's
law,
revealed that the sister that hired her is not actually her sister.
That comes a bit later on, but
a
yes.
bit.
Yes.
That's a bit like what we had in Nicky Larson with the bait and switch with the
with Black
client.
Hand. Yeah,
Yeah.
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 Yeah, you're right. It is a bit like that. But that comes much later.
So yes, that's right. So there's this whole scene in a nightclub where they've tracked her down to.
Well, the only thing the Yakuza boss knows is that she has been seen hanging around some other district of Tokyo.
Okay.
I forget what it's called, but it's...
Oh yeah, that's right. Toyoko, I think it is.
Toyoko.
Yeah.
Right, of course, because it sounds like Tokyo. And then Kaori just runs out immediately to go straight there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Ryo's like, oh god, stop, slow down. He's chasing her. They go there. She immediately starts showing the photo of Kurumi to anyone that she can see. And they all like get lost narc.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, but then sure enough, Kurumi just shows up.
Yes. Yes.
We have had a scene with her in a capsule hotel where she's been hiding out, eating food
Yes.
from vending machines. And she has received a message on TikTok
Yeah.
saying that she has been scouted by a cosmetics company called Law.
Yeah, so she's a cosplayer.
Yes.
And they want her as a rep at some event, sort of. Or
Yes.
not a rep, as like a performer, a guest.
Yeah, well, they want her
cosplay
as an
guest.
influencer,
Yes,
like
yes,
a paid
exactly.
influencer
Yeah.
at this large kind of like cosmetics event.
Yeah.
And even though she's on the run and having the worst time of her life, nonetheless, she's sufficiently...
It's too sweet. This
she
is her
can't
dream.
pass up this opportunity.
Yeah.
Nightclub.
At the nightclub, one of the bad guys shows up and tries to snatch her. I'm trying to remember why. We get this gunshot from Ryo, where he fires a bullet that goes perfectly through the crowd, so nobody's hurt and hits the target.
This is great. This is something that can't be done in the comic.
Yeah.
We can't see a bullet
Yeah.
travel in slow motion past a lot of people dancing in a nightclub, passing through the froth of a champagne bottle being popped. This is a great instance of adaptation.
Yeah.
And yes, he shoots the gun out of this guy's hand.
Yes, that's right. That's what happens. Yeah.
So we have sort of seen these sort of sinister figures that wear masks. There's no reason for them to wear masks other than for us to know that they're evil.
Yeah.
They're kind of like COVID masks, but black and sinister looking. And I think we saw them priming the bloke who drove the van into the restaurant in the introduction.
Oh, right. Okay.
And here they've shown up to try and get Kurumi. How they found her, I don't know, but perhaps they were also looking. Maybe that's where they abducted her in the first place. It doesn't really matter. They found her at the same time as Ryo and Kaori. Then there's some gunplay. As I said, the gun goes off. He shoots it out of his hand. He is not on the level of Ryo. He can't match him, so instead he's just looking bewildered and can't get a shot off, etc. That's cool.
Yeah.
Then I think Kaori corners Kurumi. Kurumi's still trying to escape, and she's exhausted and she collapses.
Yes.
And they take her back to Ryo's apartment.
Yes.
All girls end up in Ryo's apartment at some point.
Yeah.
It's something straight out of the comic. And in fact, it was in Volume 4 with his latest bodyguard client, who was in the comic. It was the university student who he happened to have saved as a young girl.
Yes.
She ends up living in his apartment. I think it just happens over and over because it's a way of showing...
And they're sleeping on the couch. He's in the bed with his mokori.
Yeah.
The sheets are like splayed across him.
It's so
There's a
over and
mokori
over.
Gag. Usually, sometimes the last panel of the comic.
Yeah. It's just so over and over we can have a mokori gag.
Yeah.
And so that we can show that Ryo is helpless around beautiful women, yet is too chivalrous ultimately to take advantage of them when they're in his home. It just keeps happening over and over and over, in case we forgot.
Yeah. So these guys, the bad guys, have failed to capture her. Now we get this shot of a shadowy organization, some kind of lair. I actually really dug this because it was so ridiculous. This kind of bad guy lair. It was very brutalist. There's no furniture or anything except this desk. The guy's just sitting in shadow. We get these two villains, Scorpion and Big Bear. I thought Big Bear. I thought they were gonna. Batman Begins us, and he was gonna turn out to be Umibozu in the end. Like, it's turn good, but that didn't happen.
No, it didn't happen.
No, he kind of looks like he's like this big dude.
He does look like Umibozu, and I kept wondering, is this Umibozu? But he's not bald.
He's like brown bear or black bear, big bear, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So these bad guys have this something inserted in the back of their neck, some technology, so their heads can be blown up when the villains decide to execute them.
Yeah.
And one, like, the head guy is executed in this scene. That's how we learn how these things work.
Yep. It's in the back of your neck. It very clearly telegraphed that it's going to explode because it's red lights and it goes beep, 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 beep. Then bam. Yeah. Your head gets blown off. And this is an absolute trope. I mean, exploding collars.
Yeah.
Cortical bombs.
Don't know if I've ever seen it really in the back of the neck.
Yeah.
When the guy's head explodes, it's kind of like you don't see the explosion, but you see the splash of blood on the wall.
Yeah, you're right. It doesn't so much blow your head off as it does, I suppose.
Oh, like blow an opening in your...
I suppose it destroys the major blood vessels carrying blood to the brain, the jugular.
Yeah.
So it severs your jugular essentially with an explosion.
Yeah.
Which will kill you stone dead in seconds.
Yeah.
You don't even have to blow someone's head off.
Yeah, that's true. this organization is called the Union at this stage. It's called Union.
That was interesting because one of the translations used the word union as well. And you remember I had...
All of them. All of them.
You're right.
And in the Japanese, they do say union. Yeah. So that's why it's always been union. Only Nicky Larson went with cartel.
Yeah.
Because it's gone through
the French
cartoon
animation. Yeah.
localization.
Yes.
And then to the movie.
Yes. Yes, that's right. The French localization of the Japanese anime of the manga.
Yes. So at this stage, I thought they were gonna leave out the South American angle, but that actually comes back later on because they just call them Union. They never say Teope at this stage.
Not at this stage, no.
Yeah. Meanwhile, back at Ryo's apartment, Kurumi's getting ready for her show at this.
Well, at this point,
show.
she's not so much getting ready for the show as she's getting ready to work on Ryo.
Yes.
So, Kurumi's woken up. She's confused. She doesn't know where she is. You know, she's been comforted by
That was the first
Kaori.
scene.
Yeah, that was the first scene. Yeah, has been comforted by Ryo and Kaori, and she's relaxed enough to stay there and rest, as they always do. Now as you say, we've had the scene with the neck explosions. We're back, and she's in full cosplay.
Yep.
It's in like a cat outfit, a sexy cat. And she looks completely different from the grimy, kind of strung out character that she's been in so far.
and she's still got some kind of drug in her system that gives her Spider-Man powers.
Oh, is it?
Right?
I don't think she does any
Does
more
it wear
Spider-Man
off?
stuff from... Yeah, I think it's worn off.
Oh, I thought it would just be permanently... Okay.
I don't think it gave her permanent abilities like
okay.
the Captain America serum.
Okay.
I think it's worn off.
Okay.
I think she's sort of been
So she's
strung
trying to
out.
return to a normal life, I guess.
Essentially.
Okay.
And she's doing kind of like a sexy cosplay dance, and Kaori's like coaching her. You know, say, please, 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 meow.
Yeah.
Can I do it?
Yeah.
Meow.
Yeah.
Which is what, in Japanese, it's not meow,
It's nya.
Okay.
But in Japanese, you can end a sentence. Sentences have like ending tags. But it's a bit... An author can just put any tag in there to make a character seem eccentric or something like that. It's a bit like when they say la, like people from Singapore say la, and you're just like, what does that mean? They're just like la. It's just la. It's just a word that's in there.
Yeah, it's a sentence ender.
So you can end a sentence with nya, which is like a cat's meow, and I've seen many characters do that. And it's like, how do you translate this? It's a nightmare. So they just translate it as meow over and over again.
La's a bit like an exclamation mark.
Right.
And there's a similar tag for questions, ma.
Yeah.
Anyway, as you say, so you can just swap out one and it just makes the person sound eccentric.
Yeah.
It's like a meaningless tag to end the sentence with. So, but a challenge for the translator. So said they sort of try and do puns.
Yeah.
Will you let meow go to the event? It works pretty well, I think.
Yep.
So Kaori has not been coaching her for the event. She's been coaching her to work on Ryo to convince him to accompany her to the event so he can protect her while she's there.
Okay.
Because Kaori's already figured out that Ryo is a soft touch for the ladies.
Yeah.
And she's, I suppose, clueless enough about the danger to think that it's a good idea for Kurumi to go.
Yeah. So she does, like, come on to him in a way to...
Yeah.
And he's trying to hide his erection. It's like he's got his hands over his crotch.
Yeah.
It's kind of below shot. And then I guess he caves.
No, I don't think he ever does. They just sort of make it... In fact, he says no meowing way.
Oh, right.
But they just make it a fait accompli. She says she's going anyway, and he can either tag along or not.
Yes. And so they go to the event. Kaori also is cosplayed up.
Yep.
I thought she looked pretty cool, actually, in her cosplay outfit. I dug it.
And part of that costume is
a cosplay hammer, a giant hammer. Yeah, so that's their Batman Beginsing that as well. So Ryo also shows up in a disguise with like a cowboy hat and like a horse head attached to his crotch, like he's a cowboy.
It's like one of those costumes where the bottom half of the costume is the steed.
Yes.
Except with him, it's so low effort that there's no horse's body. It's just the horse's neck and head coming out of his crotch.
Coming out of his crotch, yeah.
So it's like he's got a mokori horse's head going.
Yes, and this was the moment where he presents himself as our manager. So he's in disguise, which is a typical Ciity Hunter thing.
Yep.
Show up in some crazy disguise.
Yep.
There is a joke here where he says something to the show organizer, about how he's her manager and he's mokori something in a way that the joke doesn't make any
sense in English.
Sense.
So they just leave it out.
They just leave it out. He says like, I'm her magical management or something like that. And he's pumping his fist in a kind of way that's a little bit phallic, and he's got the horse head, giant horse head coming out of his crotch and stuff. So, anyway. So we find out here, I think it's really made clear that Lore is a cosmetics company because the president of the company approaches Kurumi and says, thank you for coming, thank you for accepting my invitation.
So she's personally invited Kurumi.
And at this point I was like, oh, well, she's the one that's making the drugs.
Yeah.
It seemed just so obvious to me for some reason. Why? I'm trying to figure out what the movie did wrong that made it so obvious that she was the bad guy. What was it about it that telegraphed this
that she came out and said she personally invited.
Yeah.
There's no reason for the CEO of the company to say that.
Oh, right. It would have been like the marketing, somebody in the marketing team.
Why would the CEO, like,
There's a lot of focus on her because, that's the thing is, Ryo wasn't going to go to the event, but then he saw a picture of the president, he's like, whoa.
Yeah.
Hubba,
she's a very spunky lady with large breasts.
Yeah, so that's why he agreed to go in the end, because he saw her photo, you're right. So there was there was maybe too much focus on her that made it clear to me that she was like a major character and not a background character. It was a bit of the opposite of Nicky Larson with the guy that found the magic potion. And you're like, well, that's not going to be a major character. And then he becomes a major character. Here it was like, well, it's just, okay, so she's in this. She's in on this. And it's a cosmetics company. It just seemed clear to me that it was like, okay, something shady is going on.
They have the technological know-how to be involved in the production of the drug.
Yeah. Yes.
So, the cosplay event occurs. The cosplayers go out on a stage and they give a performance. I suppose they do a little dance.
They do a little pose.
There's a really funny sequence, I must say, where Kurumi is getting ready to do her performance, and Kaori, they've got the Avengers earpieces where you don't need a microphone. All you do is touch your finger to your ear and you can talk to the other person that's also touching their finger to their ear. It's such a bit. But anyway, it always takes me out of whatever I'm watching when people do that. But anyway, it doesn't matter because it's worth it for what's to come. She says, do you see anything? And he goes, I've spotted them. 3 of them. I'm taking care of it. I'm moving to intercept. And we just see him striding, purposely pushing people out of the way. He goes right to the front of the stage. And then we see who he is concerned about. And it's just like 3 dorky...
Trying to do upskirts. Trying to take upskirt photos of the girls on stage.
It's like 3 dorky otaku type characters. Yeah. Like shut-ins. And then they start getting ready, like they have like a chant. They're like, alrighty, get set, 3, 2, 1, and they drop down and get ready to take an upskirt. And with City Hunter aplomb, Ryu inserts the horse sprouting from his crotch in front of Kurumi in every shot they try to take. It's really quite funny.
It is pretty good. Well, I like what comes next even more, though, because what happens is Black Bear, whatever, is up in the rafters somewhere, and he's got these trank darts, and he's trying to shoot her when she's on stage. City Hunter senses this somehow.
It's a spider sense,
it's his super sense, which we've seen before, and he's kind of blocks them with his horse.
Yeah, it's not. This isn't blocking the upskirts. Isn't the only way he
swings his horse head around.
His horse head. He uses it to block tranquilizer.
Well, what happens is Scorpion comes down and she strips off her gear until she's basically down to leather bondage gear, and she's got a whip. And I love this. I thought this is a great setup for a kind of City Hunter fight to have this woman in leather bondage gear and a whip, like a cat o' nine tails.
Yeah. So she's
have
wearing
a fight.
A corset, a leather corset.
Leather corset.
She has a whip. And it's also since been revealed when Kurumi first wakes up in Ryo's apartment that she doesn't have a sister.
Yes, that's right.
So it's the Union trying to get her back.
Yeah.
They want her back because she's the only person that has survived the drug.
Yeah.
They want her to make it viable.
Yeah. Because they're trying to weaponize it.
That's right, yeah.
So...
And here she reveals that she
was the one that pretended to be the sister.
Yeah.
This is an interesting actress. I don't know who she is, but she had an interesting face, I found. I thought she was well cast.
I think particularly all of the women actors, perhaps with the exception of Saeko, were well cast.
Yes.
Unusual features. Kaori, not classically beautiful. You could mistake her for a boy, I felt.
Maybe,
Perhaps the only one of the 4 Kaoris that you could actually mistake for a boy, but still beautiful.
Yeah.
But having even more unusual androgynous features than French Kaori.
Yeah. So they get this huge. We get another elaborate martial arts sequence between Scorpion and City Hunter on stage. People think it's part of the show.
Yes.
Then they don't think it is. Then they think it is again. It goes back and forth. I didn't really quite like that.
Yes.
So finally, he manages to beat her, but she beats Scorpion, but Kurumi has been abducted.
Yes. By a bent cop.
Yes. It was
Saiko's
Ito.
obnoxious partner.
Yeah. Ito, her
one that
higher
was
operator. Yeah.
Well, actually, I think he's inferior to her.
Oh, right. Okay.
She's in... I think she's over him, actually.
Huh. Wasn't he telling her to stop watching that videotape and stop wasting her time?
He's trying to order her around.
Oh, okay.
Because he's the baddie.
Oh, okay.
Because he's a sexist cop that's taking bribes.
Right. Now we get a moment on the... So they've lost Kurumi, they need to regroup and find her. Now we get this moment on the rooftop where Kaori unloads about her feelings about her brother and all this stuff, and it was very heavy stuff that was not very City Hunter-ish and also very Japanese cliche-ish kind of stuff. Like we've seen these kind of emotional, here's your audition scene, you know?
Oh yeah, and Kaori is, I'm sure she's a fine actor.
Yeah.
But maybe it's the direction here. She's very loud.
Yeah.
Kind of like wailing and yelling constantly, and it's ratcheted up to 11. And in a light, kind of hearted, flippant film that this film has been
there's no overturning of the moment. There's no inappropriate remark by Ryo while she's making the speech to alleviate the moment at the end of it. It's just like a heartfelt moment, heartfelt music.
Yeah. It's very melodramatic, and there's no relief.
No.
In fact, this film does this a couple of times. I think this film struggles with tone a little.
Yes, I agree.
It will often turn on a dime. It will lurch from... Ryo will be very, very silly.
Yeah.
And then very, very serious.
Yes. But especially watching Netflix. Now, I don't know if you had the same subtitles. But...
This is so nuts.
There's no... Okay, well... I didn't have an option for English and English for the hearing impaired. It was just the hearing impaired, effectively one. So every time there was like emotional music, I would get a subtitle that says emotional music.
Oh, so annoying.
So it was like telegraphing to me that this is supposed to be an emotional scene, like double, because that was happening. So yeah, you could see it turning on a dime because every music cue was described to me in the subtitles. It was like exciting music. Or something like that. Did they meet with the Kutsu again at this stage?
They get a call from him.
Yes.
So they've already figured out that Law is behind it.
Okay.
Despite having figured it out, Ryo has also placed a tracking device on Kurumi. Yeah. But he didn't even need it, because he already knew that Law was behind it anyway. Incidentally, if Law's behind
That's a big comic bookie, because he's usually ahead of everyone else. He knows more than they do.
Incidentally, if Law was behind it, why have Black Bear and Scorpion try to abduct her in front of a crowd? Just escort her to, say, follow me to the green room, and then it's a prison.
Yeah.
Oh well.
Yeah.
Oh well. Anyway, they know where she is now. The film starts to drag a bit now. They go out to a very generic kind of set.
It's like a tunnel. It's a bunker that was like left from the war days.
From the Second World War, yeah. And it's directly under or near the Law Tower, and it just has a sign out the front, like a bollard out the front with under construction on it. Has it been under construction for 80 years?
Yeah.
Yeah, whatever.
But he gets a bag of guns together.
Yep.
Much like in Nicky Larson, there's a big shootout at the plant as in Nicky Larson, a very elaborate shootout. One thing I did notice was...
John Wick, this ain't, he there's no stakes. There's about 100 mooks, and he's just
Oh no, and there's a scene specifically where he jumps in the air and is like falling backwards and shooting down and blasting guys left and right.
Yeah.
It occurred to me that it's like, well, the angel dust doesn't matter because he's better than any of these guys on the Angels, but that's true in the comic as well anyway. He's kind of outclasses all those guys that are souped up on the angel dust.
Yeah. Well, these guys aren't under angel dust. They're just regular soldiers. But we do get an angel dust character. So Bear, who he calls Kumar-chan, which was translated for me as Teddy Bear.
Yes, that was Teddy Bear.
He has been soaking in like a Bacta tank, Star Wars style Bacta tank, of the substance, the angel dust, the blue drug. And he comes out, and I guess he's supposed to be like the Hulk, but he's just completely outclassed by Ryo.
Yeah.
Ryo just makes mincemeat of him.
Yeah.
is this supposed to be the climactic fight? It's such a show. Like, he's less effective than one of those soldiers.
I did wonder, but because I was pausing it to take notes once in a while, this is still like 20, 30 minutes from the end. So I was like, when I paused, I was like, oh, this is the climactic scene. As it was in Nicky Larson, I think it was the climactic scene. But, yeah, and I was like, oh, this must be the end. No, there's still like 25 minutes left. By the way, he also shoots some canisters of gas here, much as he did in Nicky Larson.
Yeah.
There is no duck cannon.
No.
In this movie.
I'd forgotten about it till right now.
Yeah.
That was so stupid.
Yeah.
Anyway, yes, so the head of the union is here, or the head of this branch, he has his own superiors, presumably, that he answers to. He's killed the CEO.
Yeah, everyone in the lab.
And everyone, because all they need is Kurumi.
Yeah.
So Law didn't develop the serum.
That's right.
They were just, I suppose, distributing it.
Oh, I thought it was like I thought there was some 50-50 in here somehow.
The drug, it turned out, was from South America.
But they're testing it in Tokyo.
Yes, and Law's doing the testing.
Yeah.
Essentially.
Yeah.
The drug itself comes from South America, where we learn from Ryo, don't know how he knows this, that it was used in warfare, but was unreliable. In the comics, wasn't Ryo abducted by a cult in South America?
He crashed in Central America.
Right.
In the comic, he would have pulled up the corner of the panel and said, to the author, how did you explain how he knows this? And the author would just have 3 dots over his head that he doesn't have an explanation for it.
How does he know? It doesn't matter. Yeah. How does he know about it? Doesn't matter. So he makes off with her. Kaori pursues while Ryo has his lame climactic fight with Bear. He reveals to her that he was the one who killed... He didn't kill her father.
Well, we learned earlier from Saeko that... Because she handed the file over to Ryo.
Oh, yeah.
That Kaori's dad was on the same drug.
Yes.
He was on the angel dust.
Yes.
And he was killed by Makimura's father.
Yes. And now it's revealed, this is very tangled, that the guy who currently has Kurumi at gunpoint, the head of the Japanese chapter of the union.
Who does speak Spanish on the phone when he calls his superiors.
I completely admit. I thought maybe I just had zoned out for a minute.
The subtitles don't.
No, they don't. You don't know he's speaking Spanish. So because he's speaking Spanish with a Japanese accent, I just thought maybe I'd misheard some Japanese, because subtitles don't say, speaks Spanish. You're just supposed to...
They usually do in Netflix. I'll have to double check if they actually did.
Or maybe I was looking down at my phone.
Well, you know what? There is a mistake, though, because when he goes back to Japanese, he tells the guys in Japanese, let's go, and then the subtitle said in English. And it was like that. He didn't say "let's go" in English. What are you doing? But he did say it in a weird accent, like he was South American or something.
Okay, maybe they've got some wrinkles to iron out with the subtitles.
Don't know.
They can update them. I mean, I suppose that's the advantage of streaming.
Yeah.
So he reveals to Kaori that he was responsible for her father being put on the drug.
Yes.
He was going to go clean or something, or report or confide in the cops.
Yes.
He was going to go straight. This bloke dobbed him in, had him exposed to the drug, and then he was shot by Makimura's father. Kaori.
This is another very dramatic. She's banging. They're separated by a glass wall. And she's banging on it, and she's crying and screaming, and it's more of this very dramatic stuff.
She yodels a bit more in this really, like.
Yeah.
And then Ryo shows up. He's defeated the junkie downstairs by shoving a grenade in his mouth and pushing him in a pool of water. He arrives, and we've established in an earlier scene that he can put a bullet exactly where another bullet landed. This is bulletproof glass, but because he's such a great shot, he is able to put bullet after bullet after bullet into exactly the same point on the glass.
Yeah.
Which makes a hole, and he's able to, first of all, subdue the guy on the other side, and second of all, weaken the glass enough that he's able to throw himself through it. In a repeat of what he did in the very first scene in the movie, when he shot the window he came down on the zip line and crashed through it.
Yes.
Then,
This guy's called for his helicopter to pick him up. The helicopter's not putting down their ladder to help him. They're, waiting.
That's right. They're waiting to see what happens.
Yeah.
Kaori has her father's gun. Is she going to shoot him? Is she going to take vengeance and stain herself with the blood? This is straight out of the comic, because Ryo doesn't want her to be involved in that element of the business. And sure enough, she can't bring herself to shoot him.
Was that in the comic? Or was it Nicky Larson?
I think it... Oh, yeah, perhaps it was Nicky Larson I'm thinking of. No, because you're right, because in the comic she's using guns all the time. It's Nicky Larson, you're right. Well done. Yeah, she doesn't kill him. Instead, he's killed by someone in the helicopter.
Oh, I thought it was Ryo shooting behind his back again?
No. They set off the bomb in his neck. And the only people that could have done it are the people in the helicopter. But yes, he hears his neck bomb start to beep.
Yeah.
He realises he's done for. He throws himself at a gun.
Yeah.
Trying to shoot, I don't know, Kurumi, Kaori,
Looked like he
Ryo.
was pointing at the helicopter.
Maybe even the helicopter. Yeah.
But then it seemed like Ryo shot him from behind the back again.
Yes.
Under his armpit
the exact
again.
same thing. He shoots him through his jacket again. Enough to stop him from shooting
whoever
he was going to shoot, and then his neck explodes.
Yes. Okay. So...
The film ends with Kaori moving in.
Yeah, well, he wakes up in his bed. It looks very much like the comic, the way the sheets are like half on him or whatever. He comes out, she's in the apartment, she says, we're going to work together from now on.
Yep.
Then he does something perverted, I can't remember what.
He's horrified that she's thrown out his porn.
Yes.
And she finds the last box, which is his collectibles, his discontinued ones.
Yeah.
And he's trying to stop her from taking them. And she whips out the hammer, which is kept.
Hammer,
and it's been mended because it was shot by the sniper's bullet.
That's right.
So it has a big bandage around the middle.
Right.
And she's chasing him around with it, hitting him with it.
Yeah, and then freeze, and then roll credits.
Yeah, we get something like a comic panel.
Yeah.
Incidentally...
this is the first one of the 3 official Ciity Hunter movies. This is the first 2, Ciity Hunter and Nicky Larson, ended with actual drawings by Hojo.
Yes.
As the final frame.
I don't know what Hojo's involvement in this film was. It's hard to find out.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem to... I don't know if he was involved, because I did, in that interview I mentioned before, the one that appeared in the Japan Times, the director noted that his source for how to stay faithful for the manga was Suzuki himself. The actor that plays Ryo.
Interesting.
He is apparently a massive Ciity Hunter fan.
Okay.
But it's interesting that he didn't say the Hojo himself.
Yeah.
They're not consulting Hojo about this film.
Yeah.
Instead, the director's consulting Suzuki.
It's speaking like it's, to bring up Henry Cavill again, he was one of the Witcher that was like, this is supposed to be like this in the books, and that's supposed to be like that. That's why he ended up quitting. Yeah. Because they kept changing
they wouldn't
stuff.
Listen to him.
And apparently, Kyle MacLachlan on Dune was the guy that was like, this is how it is in the book. Bell, thank you.
Amazing.
Huh, that is interesting. So we got it's a bit like the Nicky Larson situation, a little bit.
With the superfan being kind of
superfan.
Like one of the driving creative forces behind it.
Yeah.
I will say that Suzuki is pretty good at gurning, pulling faces.
Yes, absolutely.
That look like
Yep.
the Ciity Hunter faces.
Yeah.
In the lengthy introduction, I think Saiko puts a gun under his chin.
Yeah.
And he pulls. This is not a visual medium, this podcast. But he pulls a face that looks exactly like a face that Ryo would pull in the comic.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. He does it a couple of times for sure.
I have some other problems with his performance. As I said, he has a tendency to kind of go from one extreme to the other, deeply serious to deeply ludicrous. But as far as pulling faces is concerned, I don't think you can find a better Ryo.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Any other trivia that you happen to find? Anything at all?
There's not a lot.
Yeah.
The actor, Ryohei Suzuki, he did some training for the film.
Okay.
Specifically, learning how to shoot. Sufficiently unusual in Japan to rate a mention in the Japanese media because of firearms are tightly controlled in Japan. He had to go overseas for a couple of weeks to learn to shoot.
Okay.
And he trained constantly with practice like fake guns, like prop guns, just so that he would have that sharp, those clearly defined movements that he's constantly doing. While other people are fumbling around with guns, he's always got very crisp movements. He's always utterly confidently drawing it out of the holster, pointing it. It actually looks good. I can see he put in the work. Yeah. He also got a manual license to drive the Mini Cooper.
Okay.
Ryo's famous car. Yeah. I guess they don't come in an automatic, a Mini Cooper?
I guess not.
The only other point of interest would be Makimura's actor, who's only in the film for a short time. Well, I say short time. It's actually like a quarter of it because it's that fucking lengthy introduction.
Yeah.
His name is Masanobu Ando.
Okay.
and he was in Battle Royale, the movie Battle Royale.
Ah.
He played Kiriyama, the very dangerous student that never speaks a word and is blinded in the final scene.
Oh, okay.
When I saw that, I was like, whoa!
Yeah, right. Interesting.
And that, I fear, is it.
Okay, so I guess we should do our votes.
Yes, please. The comic is still yay for me.
Yeah, even with that super bad translation.
Yep.
There's a lot of great kooky stuff in there. It's getting weirder and weirder. The movie.
Okay, for me, this is a yay.
Yeah.
It's not perfect.
Yeah.
But it's polished.
Yeah, it's very slick.
Yes.
I thought Nicky Larson was also very slick.
Oh, yeah.
And I also thought Nicky Larson was not perfect, but was a yay.
No, it's similar. Yeah, right. Isn't that interesting? And yet this time I've done yay, haven't I?
Yeah. Well, it's more... I mean, it's set in Tokyo. Everybody's speaking Japanese. It seems like I actually do feel like Nicky Larson is closer to the spirit of the comic.
I would very much like to come back to the 4 movies.
Okay, yeah.
But I will just only go on to say, I think the plot maybe makes a little more sense.
Yes, but I had trouble following, like, her escape and who was trying to get her and why these Yakuza were involved. And I did get... But I get confused in all 4 of these movies. I was like, wait, why is this guy confused over here? Yeah.
The action, I think maybe... I mean, it's not John Wick, but few films are. I think the action...
I like that it wasn't trying to be John Wick, because he was doing superhuman jumps and stuff that were impossible, gunshots, like...
I think unlike Nicky Larson, where the action was pretty strained and not very good...
No, we don't have anything like the fight in the hospital over the naked guy with the gun on his crotch.
In this film, the choreography is tighter and more expressive of a theme.
Yes.
Not so much about grabbing people's dicks, but say in the Makimura Ryo fight scene that happens in the corridor of the soapland, Ryo is, again, it's like his gunplay. He does everything with a minimum of effort. He's like a martial arts master. Someone throws a punch at him, he brushes it aside with barely an effort. Or he's just always exactly where he needs to be to ensure that someone misses him, to whip off their pants, to tie them up, to ensure that another guy's punch hits a person next to him instead of him. And then we cut away to Makimura. He's doing okay, but their styles couldn't be more different. Like, true. Guys are hanging off his neck. Yeah. He's like struggling to pull their arm away. Yeah. He's like frenetically elbowing them. It couldn't... The artistry of Ryo as the City Hunter, master of his domain, is contrasted with Makimura's much more rough, not down to earth, but much more rough, unpolished style of fighting. And, like, here, the choreography is sending a message. Ryo is just sort of... He's a badass.
Yes.
He's superhuman.
Yes.
Makimura's just a regular guy.
Yeah.
He's still a match for these thugs, but... they're like, their hand is like pushing his face. He's like, Ryo's like, "Are you okay, Makimura?" As he deftly parries another punch. Makimura's like, "Yeah, I'm doing okay." Some guy's fist is up in his nose.
Yeah.
This is not a visual medium, but I'm shoving my own fist up my nose to deliver this insight. So I like that. I suppose just the little things like that are what makes this a yay for me.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's a yay, too. I didn't like the serious parts.
No.
I don't think Nicky Larson had any parts that were that serious for that long, for that length of time. Like big set pieces of melodramatic speeches. Agreed. Yeah.
And agreed. And as we've discussed, I think this film has a big problem with tone and pacing. I can't express my bafflement enough about an almost 20-minute introduction.
Well, somehow, as I said, that didn't bother me. Somehow I didn't even notice it.
I don't know. I noticed it. Yeah. But you could do this with flashbacks. And all the other films have done this, well, with the exception except for 1993. The other films
93 did it as basic as a flashback, because it was a speech given by
right. It was
Jackie
a flashback, it just came at the start of the film.
In a dream sequence, almost, yeah.
It's just so odd, like, it felt like the filmmakers didn't have confidence enough in the material to not tell an original City Hunter story, and it is essentially an original story, despite leaning heavily into kind of the Angel Dust arc, without running through the whole plot of Volume 1 on fast forward. And yet, at the same time, they have the word mokori in there constantly without offering context.
Yeah.
Strange, but yes, it's still yay.
Okay, adaptation. It's a yay for me.
Okay, good.
I think everything you're complaining about is the reason why it adapts pretty well. I think
that's good.
I think it's it's hitting all those notes. It's got all the parts in it. I don't think it's missed. Again, as I mentioned at the very start of the episode, kind of projecting what I'm about to say now, I think we're missing the pants tense.
Yeah.
That hasn't happened once in 4 movies. In this one, he tries to hide his erection in one scene. Out of frame.
Yeah, I just don't think you can do it right.
No, and we don't have any comically elaborate torture plots, like ridiculous torture plots.
Yes,
that didn't happen once, and yet I think this is pretty good overall. I started laughing right from the opening scene where he's singing that Mokori song while looking at the girls.
It's funny.
There's funny stuff all throughout. There's crazy ideas. And they even covered the Angel Dust. I was really surprised when I was like, oh, they're not going to do the Angel Dust plot. Oh, they're not going to have the South American cartel. No, it's all in there.
You're right. And Ryo even calls it Angel Dust.
Yeah, could it have been sillier? Yes. But overall, I'm going to say yay.
Yes, for me, I agree, and that's why it's nay.
Okay.
For me, this one's sacrificed kind of like storytelling nous in favour of accuracy. Case in point, long intro. Then there are other things. On the other hand, we have too much accuracy. Then otherwise there are some strange... No, I don't know about strange choices, but I feel like Ryo is too competent.
Huh.
Well, he's always competent in the comic.
Yeah.
But it's a boring kind of competence. Although I did say that I did like some of the way the film did the bullets and stuff. But I think in the
moment I think about in the comic is that scene where he swings Kaori in front of a tree trunk and the 2 knives zip past her head and land inside, and he pulls them out and flings them behind his head without looking and hits the villain behind him in the head and chest with these 2 knives.
Yeah.
So that's the level of ridiculous awesomeness we should be going for, and I think this movie does get it.
I don't think it does. I think he's more just gunning people down with supreme accuracy. The point that I made in my notes is that in the manga, Ryo is like Kenshiro from Fist of the North Star.
Yeah.
He gets into trouble. You know he's going to get out of it, but the attraction is, what wacky way is he going to get out of it?
Okay.
Right? And I think this feeds into also elaborate torture sequences.
Yeah.
Because Kenshiro is often torturing his foes. So Kenshiro, those of you who remember our episode on Fist of the North Star, will excitedly announce a new power hitherto never seen.
Yeah.
And I think
I know what you're going for. There's too much just guns and martial arts in this movie, and not other crazy stuff.
Yeah.
He never throws knives behind his head. And actually, I kept thinking about the general, or whoever he was from Volume 1, who had the rocket launcher in his leg, in his fake leg. And I'm like, we've never reached that level in any of these movies.
That's the other thing that's missing. The villains in this film are boring. It's partly a critique of the film more generally, but also, where are the cartoonish villains like Junior, the tiny bicycle gangster? Where's a guy with a gun for an arm and a rocket launcher for a leg?
Yeah.
Instead, like a greedy CEO, guy in suit. I suppose they're exploding next.
Yeah,
but
you're right, actually. Maybe I should change
No, don't change it, please. You like it because...
It's kind of missing a lot of stuff. You're right.
It's kind of like hollow in the middle.
I have to switch to nay. It's missing too much of that craziness, actually, now that I think about it.
Yeah.
It's got all the surface details. It is borderline Batman Begins.
Oh yeah, that actually you're consistent because you've been making that comparison the whole way through.
Yeah.
The only other thing I would mention is his perversity's been toned down, but as you say, a modern Ciity Hunter film can't accurately reflect the perversion of the original manga.
Volume 1 of the original manga,
especially Volume 1. Yeah. Here he just seems to kind of have Tourette's syndrome. But instead of Tourette's, it's Mokori syndrome.
Yeah.
He's just yelling Mokori all the time.
Yeah.
All right. We did mention, speaking of Mokori, that I'm relying heavily on this interview I read in the Japan Times. They said that the aspect of the original story that they grappled with the most was Saeba's frequent utterances of Mokori, a euphemism for erection. Episodes of the anime hardly go by without the lead character voicing the risque word with glee. Suzuki and Sato, the director and star, decided after much discussion to keep it in. We felt it is tolerable, given Saeba doesn't always use the word sexually, but almost randomly. Good. Now, What I'd like to do now is perhaps we'll vote on all 4 movies.
Okay.
So say best film, worst film, best adaptation, and so on. So what about best film? Which of the 4 is the best?
I still like Nicky Larson. That's the one that I would probably rewatch first. I like this one, but I think Nicky still edges it out for being a bit crazy. I will say, because there's similarities, I have a feeling that these filmmakers did not watch that one because the similarities are too close, like shooting the canisters and stuff. Right. Do you have some fact about this?
I'm sorry, I do. Okay. I do.
Okay.
I was only going to mention that how about I come back to it?
Okay, so what I was going to say is I felt like they're so close in some ways, like the factory fight at the end.
Yeah.
But in this one, we don't have those 2 hangers-on that were annoying you in Nicky Larson.
Yeah.
So in some ways, it's like smoother.
Yeah.
But we're missing like that Pamela Anderson craziness and all just sorts of, and the fight with the magnets, the giant magnet. Just
yeah. It's just that's why I voted no for that movie because there's bloody hangers-on.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, Nicky Larson's still my favorite. I would say the one I liked least is the Jackie Chan one, although I did like elements of it, some elements of it. I think Mr. Mumbo was the least slick of the 4. It's like the roughest around the edges.
Yeah.
Maybe just...
Well, I think it was probably made with the least amount of money.
Absolutely.
To be, at risk of being contrary, I think I'm going to vote Mr. Mumble for the best
Interesting.
Of the 4.
Okay.
Because I feel like it's the most... I mean, the fact that it's not an official City Hunter adaptation, I think goes to show that it's the most coherent film in and of itself. It kind of stands on its own merits.
Okay.
So it's kind of like a complete package. You don't... And it is rough around the edges, but I think it's... I think it's funny. I think there's some pretty decent action, and a story which you can. It helps if you've seen the comic, if the anime or the manga, but you can enjoy regardless of.
Well, I thought Nicky Larson functioned like that, and I thought there were a lot of in-jokes in it, which I didn't get, but didn't matter because the scenes were working anyway.
Yes, but I can't like Nicky Larson because there's too much in it that gives me the absolute shits. Like there's 2 guys, and the way the plot drags enormously in the final third, like with that car chase scene that goes too long, So I know it's Mr. Mumble for me.
Okay, interesting.
That's the one. I don't know if I'm going to watch it again, but it's the one that I think.
Right.
And it probably did the worst of the 4.
Yeah.
In fact, it did. It certainly did.
Yeah.
It's certain. All right, and worst for me is also the Jackie Chan one. There's just so much in it that's wrong, offensive and wrong, and anything that's good in it is few and far between. The sins of Nicky Larson are magnified 100-fold in City Hunter. Obnoxious cameos, offensive jokes. Yeah. All right, best adaptation.
Well, it's Nicky Larson, I think.
I completely agree.
Okay.
This is the one that's taken the source and done the most with it.
Yeah. It's tried to keep the energy level of the comics.
Yes.
I think, whereas all the others have strayed. I think the director's distractions in the first one, the Jackie Chan one, he's like doing his own thing with that dance sequence and the casino. It's like, none of this has anything to do with City Hunter. Even the Street Fighter scene, which I mentioned before as being City Hunter-ish, is just too long to be City Hunter. This one with its melodramatic moments, Mang Bo with its weird backstory for Kaori.
Oh yeah, that was not so great.
Yeah.
And Umibozu being his Batman, almost.
Was he? Yeah. He's his roommate or something. It's bizarre. Yeah.
But yeah, this is the one. Well, as you know, I abhor accuracy and love. Craziness. I love it when they take something and run with it.
Yeah.
And that's absolutely what Nicky Larson did. And I think, actually, it's the most likely of the 4 that I will rewatch in the near future. But don't take my word for it. Here's what Hojo himself said about the script to Nicky Larson, which he was given a copy of before the filming. I have received a lot of offers to adapt City Hunter for the cinema. And most of the scripts that I receive are quite flat. A lot of action film scripts that don't necessarily understand the point of City Hunter. In Philippe Lachaud's script, there was everything. Drama, laughter, slightly naughty stuff. He had taken into account the whole of the work.
That's good.
And I did say I'd come back to this. The makers of this year's one, the 2024 one, were also aware of Philippe Lachaud's
Okay.
adaptation. They said they were very conscious of it. He says, back in 2018, fans, including myself, this is Suzuki, thought the French version was really well done. I was like, thank you, Philippe Lachaud.
Why would they make so many scenes that similar, like carrying the bag of guns into the facility to have that big firefight? Bizarre
Some of
choices
them are
they
just action movie tropes.
had. Yeah, I guess so.
I mean, yes.
Because even Mangbo did the same thing where he geared up and built that Travis Bickle thing for his arm before he took his bag of guns in there for the final fight, I guess.
I did like that sequence. I liked.
I will say
it's funny the final the last act of Mangbo, I think, is a big part of the reason why I maybe like it.
Yeah.
I think it's the most consistent of the four because I wasn't bored.
Yeah.
A lot of these other ones I'm bored coming into the end of the film.
Kind of true, yeah. I will say I still think Elodie Fontaine from Nicky Larson is my favorite of the Kaoris.
Yeah. I was going to say, if you want to keep going.
My favorite Psycho...
Yes.
Probably... I can't decide between Hélène or François Yip in Mangbo.
I don't know. But certainly I agree with you regarding Kaori, the French Kaori.
Yeah.
She really captured the kind of the sense of the character, despite being very pretty.
Yes.
But also androgynous.
Yeah.
And the hair.
The hair was so... That might be what's really selling it for me.
And I think, last of all, which of the four movies pulls off the hammer the best?
Oh, well, Nicky Larson, because they do it in dream sequences.
Right.
So, this one had the cosplay hammer. So this was the Batman Begins hammer.
Yeah, okay.
What was it in the Jackie Chan one?
It was like a prop that was on the street of Tokyo at the end.
Oh.
So it was part of an advertisement or something, and she snatched it up.
Oh, that's right. That is right. Yeah, so that was just like a nod. That was like a wink at the fans in that one. It wasn't like part of the plot if you had no familiarity with City Hunter.
Yep.
I still think Nicky Larson got it. Because they had it in the dream with the giant one. And
You're right.
She's actually chasing him around the apartment and smashing stuff.
Well, she has a sledgehammer.
Yeah,
she's chasing him around with a sledgehammer. So on the one hand, she has a sledgehammer. On the other, there's a dream sequence where she's wielding the actual hammer. And I suppose that's most like the comic because it's clearly it's not breaking the fourth wall, but that's where
it's impossible. It's just an impossible
something
thing
that can't be happening.
Yeah.
Whereas it's probably a mistake to have it literally happening. Although all four felt a need to have the hammer in it. I think worst is probably Mr. Mumble, where it was a sports bag with the handle of a racket sticking out.
I was trying to remember, yeah. That is very cheeky, especially since it was an unauthorized adaptation to even try to slip that in. Yeah, and from a distance, the sports bag looks like a hammer. Yeah, that's the worst. That's really Batman Beginsing it.
Even more so, yeah.
Okay, so please rate, review, subscribe on whatever your platform is. Please join our Patreon. Please join us on Facebook. Please join us on Instagram. I've opened an Instagram account.
You have indeed.
I'm going to try my hardest to have a reel on there every week, which is a clip from the show of some sort. And also I will put the episode artworks, the cover art on there, because there's actually 2 cover arts done every week. One for your Square players and one for YouTube. So if you're in one or the other, you probably aren't seeing the other art. Sometimes they're a little bit different. If you're an obsessed fan and that's the kind of thing you care about.
And you can't be bothered going to 2 different websites, you can go to Instagram and see them both. My
plan is on Thursdays to do a Throwback Thursday and have some art from old episodes, or maybe try to put together a reel from an older episode.
You truly are the hardest working man in show business.
So I'm going to try to catch up on those. So we've got some business trips coming up and some recreational trips, but we're going to try to minimize disruption. I think there's only going to be 1 skip week between May and June, but because of our need to accelerate the recording of episodes, we're going to do some cheats over the next couple of weeks.
So we are.
So we're not going to be doing some feature films. We're going to be doing a couple of TV episodes. Now, every episode of Tales from the Crypt was based on all 90 episodes were based on EC Comics stories. So I don't want. Yes, actually, do send me some angry emails. Our email address is in the show notes. Send us an email. Say you guys shouldn't be doing TV episodes. But next week we will be doing the Masters of Horror episode Jennifer, which was episode 2 of season 1, I think.
I thought it was episode 4.
Okay, episode 4.
Doesn't matter. But directed by Dario Argento.
Directed by Argento and based on a short 8-page comic by Bruce Jones and Bernie Wrightson, which you can probably find online anywhere. Jennifer is spelled a weird way, like there's only one N or one F or both, maybe.
Yeah, only one N.
Yeah.
Normally Jennifer would have 2.
Yeah, so we'll do a TV episode this week and next week, and then we'll get back to you. See you then.
See you then.
Yeah, because I'm going to have to actually pull from the dub for the intro quote.
Sure.
It occurred to me, so I'm going to have to kind of scrub through it.
He
Look
gets
for
to
something.
his Mokori rant.
I wonder
at the
about
start.
the song that he sings at the start. I wonder how they handled that. So.
I think they do Ode to Joy. It's some sort of...
Oh, okay. Interesting.
It's something like Ode to Joy, or a classical piece, and he's like going, Mokori red bikini, Mokori yellow bikini. You know, it's just... it's just like, if you don't know what Ciity Hunter is or Mokori is, just like, what is going on?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.